Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Jess and John pod. I'm Jess,
And I'm John. Hello, JJ Nash.
and this is a podcast where we talk about the news and the economic divide in our country. John is a reporter. I'm a reporter, journalist. We're out in the field. We're making social media posts about the work we're doing, covering stories that matter for the working class in America and corporate corruption and all of these things. And then we met because we were both doing the same shit.
Yeah, and now we're here talking about that with all of you, our friends, our JJ Nash. Yes, we sometimes both commit serious acts of journalism here, but we talk about it on the pod pretty loosely, so welcome to it.
Welcome to it. We talk about the news, we talk about what we've been focusing on and reporting on, and we try to keep it casual because I feel like that's what I want out of media these days. I think people are sick of the buttoned up media, so we're glad to be with you, JJ Nation, to help us grow and reach more people. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, tell the group chat about it. It's what all the kids are doing these days, even the defense secretary, you know what I mean?
And we're going to be recording live for the first time next Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. I think that's the time we lock down. Is that good for you, John?
It is now.
So I wanted to start the show by giving a little Luigi update. Now, that by Luigi, I mean Luigi Mangione, of course. A lawyer for Luigi, according to Polymarket, is seeking to suppress evidence taken from his backpack during his arrest at that McDonald's in Pennsylvania. Now, allegedly, police seized the backpack without a warrant, and after stopping Mangione for looking suspicious, they detained him without reading him his Miranda rights. They did that like 15 minutes into the detention. Then they searched his backpack for the 3D printed gun, a fake driver's license, and a notebook, which were supposedly the things that link him to the murder of CEO Brian Thompson. Now, his attorney, Luigi's attorney, is arguing in court that this was an unlawful search and seizure of the backpack, and the evidence therefore should be thrown out of the trial. The disputed materials are pretty central to this case. We've all seen that very blurry security camera footage. Now, the traders on Polymarket are betting on this, and it is crazy to me that that is why I had this coverage pop up on my feed. Where is the Luigi Mangione coverage? Traders are predicting an 8% chance that the judge will declare a mistrial so far. So if those who are currently predicting yes and have bet on that, they could see a return of 1,150%. Because Americans like to gamble, we're getting Luigi Mangione updates. It's not being covered by mainstream media like the fucking Menendez brothers or whatever.
Yeah, and that is a notable admission, I feel like, especially in this political moment. I mean, when you go back to when this was unfolding, it is pretty important to remember just the reaction that this had, because you had people from all walks of political life who, might not condone what happened, but definitely understood how somebody got there. And, the character himself, Luigi Mangione, is definitely somebody who is a wealthy scion of a family. Everybody saw that even extreme levels of wealth didn't insulate you from how fucked up our healthcare system was, and they recognized that in this entire act that happened. And here we are months later, after such a significant reaction in this political moment where we needlessly are captives of this healthcare system in the richest country on earth, when scores of smaller, less wealthy nations are managing to provide healthcare for their citizens, and yet there's almost no news coverage from this in mainstream outlets. Also, I think it's really important, the point that you led with in all of this about the process and the Miranda rights. It is important to uphold those right now in this moment too, as all of those things, fundamental pieces of our Constitution, are under assault by this rogue administration, who is cracking down on free speech, who is throwing the basis of our legal system out, who's running this country, like a mobster, and turning all of the parts of our state against the people that they don't like. Trial as big as this, it's really important to remember that we have laws for a reason.
How perfect is it, though, that Luigi Mangioni's trial could fall apart, and Luigi is someone they really want to just throw the book at. Is that what they say? Throw the book at them when they really want to put them in jail and they don't like them? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that still holds up.
We had Eric Adams doing his big perp walk and everything. They want to get this guy out. The ruling class hates what he stands for. But how hilarious that just cops doing their job poorly and being lazy would be.
It's gonna fuck up the ruling class. They're like, hey, they're like, the police, you guys exist so that we can like quell an uprising, against our insane level of wealth. We're gonna need you to like read those Miranda rights, people. And the cops are just like, I don't know. I'm gonna rifle through his backpack at a McDonald's.
Yeah. Amazing. So we wanted to cover that at the top because so few people are covering the Luigi Mangione stuff, and we agreed that on this show we will be covering the updates with that case. So look forward to that. In the upcoming episodes, we'll be reporting, whatever the latest updates are. And
we usually do we've done in the past a petty wins segment, and we were thinking about that before we did the show today. And I realize now that the cops failing to read Luigi Mangione Miranda rights as they are going through key evidence is definitely my petty win this week.
That's such a good one. Okay, I'm gonna come up with mine by the end of the episode.
Nice.
We also wanted to talk about our latest recession core, and I will say, John, we were watching Love Island last night, just getting some good trash TV in.
Classic.
And the girls were dogging on a new girl that came to the villa, a new bombshell.
The villa.
And they said, she's blonde with roots, which basically means like the hair has grown in a bit and she naturally has darker hair, which is common. But something that is coming back, I was explaining to my boyfriend, is recession hair, which is blonde with root shadows. So you can let it grow in and you don't have to pay for another like bleach and tone for a while.
Hey.
And even celebrities are getting it. So it's like coming on trend because of the recession, but like the trend is permeating into the wealthier people who can definitely afford multiple blonde appointments.
Hey, blonde with roots is a trend that never left the Ohio Valley, baby. So you're welcome, celebrities. We've been doing that. We've been on that. Just like
my culture's not your costume.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Put some respect on our name, baby. We've been in a recession in the Ohio Valley since the 80s.
For some reason, when I say blonde with roots, I think of roots like homegrown, like I'm blonde with some roots.
Yeah, that too.
Oh god. Okay, so we really need to talk about what the fuck is up with the Dems, because David Hogg is in a whole situation. I mean, I didn't think the Dems would be stupid enough to really push forward. Oh god, I'm hitting my soda. To push forward with ousting David over him talking about primarying people. And I've heard an interesting take on this from my buddy Cam Caskey, who's been covering this a lot, another Gen Z person that's now in the podcast space at the Bulwark Network. And he was saying, David Hogg has a PAC, and is he using his position within the DNC to fundraise for his PAC? Like, should this be a thing you can do? But I don't want to miss the forest for the trees here. While that's an interesting point, I think more importantly, the Dems just don't want the party to change. They want the old men to be in charge.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an insistence upon neutrality when that's being used against the corporate core of the establishment. But then, of course, the corporate core of the establishment is free to not be neutral in nearly all other situations, with a pretty endless list of examples to go on there. And I think people are right to be worried about it, because we are stuck in this two-party system. As long as we have these winner-take-all elections, we only really have one major political party to get us out of this mess. And everybody's looking around like, okay, some changes are going to be made, right, guys? And then you've got a nice, moderate, acceptable young person coming in here and saying, hey, can we have some competition? That's all he's asking for, is just competition. And the answer is a big, fat, resounding no. So I think people are right to be worried about this. And also, you could look at David Hogg and be surprised that so much of a stink is being raised about this. But I think that's because he's really touching the third rail here, which is the old corporate core of the Democratic Party is going to hold on to power. This is where a movie reference would really come in handy, but I don't watch movies. But it's like they're holding on to this orb, and nothing will remove it from their hands. But David Hogg is trying to do that, and they don't like it. Not one
They're
bit.
turning into Schmeagol with the ring.
That's it. God.
Precious.
Okay. Yes. The ring of power. We all have to throw that fucker into Mordor.
It's crazy now that David Hogg's getting slandered by all of the people that are buddy-buddy with the establishment of the party. And it's weird because I thought David Hogg was more of a normie. And now, what's his choice after this? If he really gets ousted from the DNC, think about what that does emotionally to a person. We are going to see David Hogg potentially be on the side of a political revolution, which wasn't on my bingo card.
I can see the memes with the David Hogg laser eyes. What's that meme called with the Joe Biden laser eyes?
This could be good for us. Dark Hogg.
Dark Hogg. Yes.
And it's like a black pig with red eyes.
Oh, man, that goes so hard. That goes so Hogg.
But I think what we should turn to is perhaps this James Lee interview. I swear I've met James Lee in person. I don't remember where. Maybe when I was living in LA. This is a really good interview, though. And we'll play it for you. Basically, he's saying Bernie and AOC are shepherds of the Democratic Party to quash any real momentum for an independent or worker-aligned movement. And the more he made the case, the more I was like, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
We could go down that path, right? And I think maybe we're at the breaking point where if we don't see some action soon, I will accept this thesis, John.
I think it's right to worry about it. There's a lot of talk on the internet. Everybody kind of knows, with good reason, that the Democratic Party as it stands today is like a graveyard for progressive ideas. And we're talking about mainstream progressive ideas, not even things that would be considered more left about asserting control over the means of production. You have a long way to go to get to that place where much more moderate ideas run into the Democratic Party and they die. So I get it. It is a good thing to worry about, a good thing to critique. At this point, when we really need an opposition party to develop, we need to be pretty vigilant about that getting squandered. I have a couple thoughts on this. I mean, first, it's credit where it's due. Bernie and AOC, to me, are head and shoulders above 90% of the Democrats out there when it comes to working class representation. I don't think we can just, at this point, throw them out for their imperfections because they are the best starting point that we have. But if the plan is to just stick with the Democrats, yeah, I'm going to be worried. Obviously, look at David Hogg. Moderate guy, asked nicely, is getting tossed. And that's what happens when you trust this party too much or give it too much slack. But we have seen Bernie and AOC hinting at more than just sticking with the Dems. They've been in legacy media endorsing people to run and win by any means, including running as independents against the Democratic Party. That's something that Bernie built his whole life around, coming to power that way. But we need that to be more than just hints and headlines. If they are serious about reorienting this party around labor, people who have to work in the morning, recovering that base, which is what has got to happen, then they've got to make winning by any means a feature of their public presence, not just a footnote of it. I think running independents makes sense in every red state. It makes sense in every state that's trending red. We talk a lot about the results that Dan Osborne put up, but let's hear that nonstop from Bernie and AOC. I think excellent people and candidates are in the wings ready to step in, but running that way is different than when Bernie did it. It is harder now. There are more entrenched interests, people with money rooting against you when you do that. Any wave of candidates that's going to come up, and we need a wave of them, they're going to need air support. They're going to need real support from people like Bernie and AOC, and they need to be part of a narrative that is coming from their events, that we are out by any means necessary to reorient a major American political party around labor. And that includes running independents against this party. It includes brutal primaries where the party's still alive. And so we've seen a hint from that, from Bernie and AOC, and I'm looking for that to really scale up to, make me worry less about running into the buzzsaw of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's so weird being from Iowa where, like, I have so much hope because of Dan Osborne staging a run in Omaha and Nathan Sage already running. If you listen to that interview that we put out for JJ Nation last week.
Excellent, by the way.
He talked about being labeled a radical and really seeing himself more as a revolutionary because big things need to change. Systems need to change, but it's not extreme to say billionaires shouldn't run the country. It's extreme and radical to say billionaires should run the country and the economy, right? So I agree with rejecting the idea of radical. It's not extreme to say a government by and for the people should actually have representation for the working class. It shouldn't be just 2% of people in Washington that come from the working class. So I get my hope from that. And we haven't had a Fighting the Oligarchy tour come here. But I certainly don't see Schumer drawing crowds in Utah. So it's possible that we can do as Nathan said we should and tear the Democratic Party down to its studs and rebuild it up, which is a great analogy as the daughter of a builder. But I think, yeah, are AOC and Bernie going to fight against that or support it is the main question now. Are they going to support independent candidates like Nathan? Well, he's a Democrat. He's running as a Democrat, but he certainly does not have the backing of a lot of establishment Democrats that I've talked to. People who are more aligned to the Chuck Schumers and Nancy Pelosi's and moderates of the world. They're not fans. And so it feels like a what side are you on type of moment in American politics, especially on the left.
Never goes out of style. And yeah, I think it's pretty telling. I think it's pretty telling that the reaction to a thoroughly working class guy with the lived experience of Nathan Sage, people viewing him as radical is pretty telling about what is normal in this world of politics. It's normal to have people from the elite running things, and when they see a guy coming up like that, they're like, oh my gosh, this is radical. But we've completely lost our way if working class people running this country is a radical idea. I reject that. And back to, we started talking about Bernie and AOC. I think the real concern there, shepherding all of this movement energy into the Democratic Party, that is definitely something to keep an eye on. But I think we shouldn't let that distract us from the other big concern, which is that it can't just be two people carrying this movement energy. They really need to. We need the political revolution Bernie's been talking about for his whole career, and we need the two people at the head of this movement right now to call up the next generation of those leaders. That's what I'm much more worried about. I think they're capable of doing it, and I want to see it grow into that from this point.
So you would say you think we need a Labor Party, John?
Oh, man. Do we ever? Speaking of candidates jumping into this race from a labor perspective, I was happy to see just one such candidate enter the race. This is for the Attorney General of Colorado, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but it's David Seligman. You can tell I read it and I didn't hear it. But he's out with a tweet. He's running for Colorado AG. This is an office that has a lot of power over the corporate interest in any given state. They can influence the direction of law in this country. And he is out saying that this campaign's about reclaiming our power from the billionaires who have stolen it from us, from working families. We will fight. We will win. because we love this country and the promise that it is that it makes, which is the law belongs to us. You've got people from Bernie World supporting this guy, all good signs. But it's part of the thing I keep returning to in every political discussion, which is we need a Labor Party in this country. Full stop. And I don't care how that happens or what it looks like. Whether the Democrats collapse and get replaced, whether independent candidates are running directly against them where the party's dead, whether it's, primaries with working class candidates, as long as we reclaim the labor base as the base of the Democratic Party, that is what has to happen. Because another thing I was thinking about, CBS covered this. There's a recent study out that's showing 60% of families basically can't meet their basic needs for a bare bones quality of life in America. 60% of households. Just imagine how many millions of people that is. They are politically homeless right now. But what I keep returning to is that so many people have the shared class interest that is at such a critical point right now that the moment all of those people get on the same page, impossible things will become very achievable in this country. And I think it's important to keep front of mind as things are so bad. But things being so much better is right before us, especially when so many people are, struggling to make it. So that's what we need. We need a Labor Party. However it happens, I don't care. But that's what we'll be working for.
Right. My dad, has been a builder. That's been his job for most of his life. And it's so funny talking to him about the world and politics because we get into it. And I am someone who went to trade school for agriculture, right? I didn't think I was going to college. And so I ended up getting on the debate team in high school and doing well because within the FFA, I was public speaking about corporate farming. And I was like, maybe instead of studying something like ag-related in college, I'll try to study political science so I can go to law school. Because I heard from my friends on the debate team with rich parents that that's what you do, political science and then law. Fast forward to me being in political science classes and learning about concepts such as the consent of the governed and philosophical ideals about who makes the laws, why they make the laws, the fact that if the government is doing a poor job, people tend to revolt, and we've seen this throughout history. And now, people like my father are talking about these very abstract principles that are typically reserved for political science classrooms. Do you know how pissed off you have to make the working class so they learn political science theory?
Yeah,
We're in
actually,
a rough shape right now.
That is a recession indicator of the to the most intense degree.
Crazy, but
yeah. I think that's got to be the test. We're talking about a Labor Party here, and it's just the test should be, what are you going to do? If you're wanting people to vote for you, to be taken seriously as a candidate, what are you going to do to roll back the power of billionaires right now? Not just to look good or to sound good or to be better than Trump. I mean, that bar is in hell. But what are you going to do to solve the root cause of the problem of why 60% of these households are not meeting their basic needs? What are you going to do to roll back billionaire power and return that to the working people who are out here learning political science out of necessity? I think that's the question that we have to hold up, especially to candidates on the Democratic side, because if the billionaires are not worried about you, if they don't spend time thinking about how to quash your movement, if you're just kind of a laughing stock to the billionaires, then what are you even doing? What is the point of your party? And I can tell you, as a person that in a red state, West Virginia has very interesting politics. Not so long ago, it was governed by Democrats for 80 years, but now it is the second most red state in the country. I can tell you here, which is why I've been advocating for independent labor candidates to run, The coal interests of the state, the billionaires of the state, they don't lose any sleep about what the state Democratic Party is doing. And that is the case for so much of the Democratic Party across the country. So we'll know that we're making real progress when the candidates that we choose to run, whether they're in the party or out of the party, are causing billionaires and corporate interests to lose sleep. I think that should be the standard.
Yeah. And I don't know. People are afraid. Like, they're afraid to challenge billionaires because they get their money and their political careers funded by billionaires. I would like to speak directly to everyone in my comment section lately bullying me into running for office. It's not going to happen. I have no interest in running. I'm pretty comfortable in my position. But for anyone running for public office or currently in political power, to you, I would say, and to all those people in my comment section, tax the rich, but militantly. File RICO charges because these motherfuckers are paying the working class so much less than their labor is worth. They have manipulated our laws so that they can accumulate and hoard wealth, and people are literally dying as a result of the richest people in our country hoarding resources. Like, criminalize their behavior. It's not that complicated. And if you think about it for a second, when you're coming up with a plan of what to do with these billionaires, discipline them like they discipline the poor. Someone who is poor, who is in the street smoking weed, and the police see them, and they're a person of color, or they're in disheveled clothes or something, they're getting thrown in prison. Then they're spending their life doing contracted labor for less than $1 an hour in a lot of cases, and that's their life in America. That makes no fucking sense. Why do we not treat the people that actually create the conditions that produce poverty as the real criminals that they are? And I'm not sure why we don't see more candidates running on that, because I think it could actually be quite popular.
It's another great standard. I mean, we need an equal and opposite reaction to the Trump regime right now. And I think so many of my takes, they boil down to not having that, from the opposition party. I think, and I'm speaking to, Democratic primary voters here too. We need somebody who's not just going to be nice to look at and be nice to listen to, that can string a sentence together. We need an equal and opposite reaction to Donald Trump. And what are they doing? I mean, they're kicking millions of people off of Medicaid. They are absolutely gutting the federal workforce. They're waging war on everything that stands between bloodless corporations polluting your water and you drinking the water. For every assault like that they make on our public services and our ability to control our lives, we need an opposition movement that is meeting that and exceeding that in the opposite direction of turning power back to people. So that's what I'm hoping materializes. And it's like, man, such a great point about white collar crime going unpunished. Like you can go like take a piss in the wrong place and get a charge for this. But if you like dump 500,000 gallons of toxic shit in a river, it's like a news story. And that's insane. That's insane. You can murder one person and go down for that, or you can murder 200,000 people, in the Middle East, and then it's just written about. We need a complete reversal of how things are run.
Yeah, not for nothing. This is why Luigi Mangione is popular, is because the guy that he allegedly is accused of killing is someone who is in the position of potentially, maybe you'd call it white collar crime. We call things white collar crime if they're disconnected from the person that they impact or indirectly kill. But like, if you're in a company that is polluting the river and a bunch of people get cancer and die, why is that not considered a violent crime? The idea that white collar crime is uniquely not violent because it's done from like boardrooms is ridiculous. It's more violent. A lot of people that are labeled violent criminals like hurt one person or are accused of hurting one person, whereas these super rich guys are responsible for the deaths and suffering of millions. And so I think that's why when we hear someone like this guy running for AG in Colorado, Skilliger, whatever's David
David,
Skelliger.
call into the show and tell us your name.
Please. But saying that the law should be for the people, I think resonates so much right now, specifically for that reason, that we're seeing they don't match up the destruction being caused.
Hey, you know what? What a perfect segue into my fandom for country music. Chris Christopherson and his song "The Laws for the Protection of the People." You can hear that, JJ Nation, as one of many banger tracks on the Hollers Country for Commies playlist. The Laws for the Protection of the People.
Is this a playlist that you have curated on Spotify?
It is a playlist I've curated on Spotify for all you people who were introduced to country music when Toby Keith was singing about breaking a boot off in the ass of the globe. That is not fully representative of country music, which was the original anti-establishment, anti-elite anthem. So you can find all of those classics in Countries for Commies. And now I've got us into a rabbit hole. How do we get out of this, Jessica?
How do we get out of this? Well, I was at the Pete Buttigieg rally and I was behind a guy who had a Dropkick Murphy shirt on.
Yes.
That said, like, fighting fascists since, like, 1970 something. That was cool. There's a place for music in the revolution, man.
For sure.
There always has been.
Yeah.
We're gonna try and get some musicians on the pod, actually, which will be fun. Because we need to marry culture and politics again. And I was listening to some fucking neo-libs talk about that. And I'm like, you guys are so disconnected from the actual culture. Good luck.
You're
Anyhow.
repelling people who would like to have a beer with you.
Just disgusting. So I don't know what I was expecting from Pete's first public appearance since the Biden campaign. I was really curious to see if he would break from Biden, and he did. He talked about the party making a big mistake, telling everyone the economy was great when they didn't see it that way. For them, it wasn't great. And he said it's like being married and saying, no, everything's fine. I'm totally happy to your partner when, like, everything is absolutely not fine. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Come on, man. It was a good analogy and good to see that he's breaking from Biden. But other than that, I wasn't very surprised. I don't know what I was expecting, John, that he would, like, come talk to the vets of Iowa and be like, our country's being taken over by fascists. I'm forming an army. Me, Pete Buttigieg, needs all of your expertise to fight against Trump. Like, I don't know. I was hoping for something more fiery, maybe not that. And I didn't get it. But that's okay, because I honestly didn't think anyone that was a leader in this administration was going to be part of the movement that saves our country, if I'm being entirely honest. So people were libbing out. It was mostly an older crowd, but again, it's a veterans town hall, so of course it was. He did get a standing ovation from someone who just stood up and said, I am so grateful to be standing before someone who speaks in complete sentences.
Yeah. See that's the thing. We deserve much better than that. And I want to say a couple words about this because I have a ton of friends who are big Pete Buttigieg fans who are really counting on him to come through in this moment. And I get why people feel this way. He is young, and what a relief, because every one of these people subjecting us to this terrible shit is like dying while they're doing it. So, when the bar is that low, it's like, okay, you're young, you can string a sentence together, please save us. But people, we deserve a lot better than this. And why I have reservations with Pete Buttigieg, and I'm willing to let those go. I'm willing to let the field of candidates prove that they're going to stand up for the 60% of people not meeting their basic needs right now. I'm open to Pete Buttigieg putting action to words. But what gets me about Pete Buttigieg is you've got a lot of people who could be candidates who bring working class lived experience to this. And you can be a working class champion without that lived experience. But someone like Pete Buttigieg went through McKinsey Consulting. And if you don't know what that is, there's an entire suite of professional services that serve the largest companies and the people who run them on earth. All of these companies right now, by the way, that are making up the billionaires in Trump's cabinet, that are donating to his inaugural fund to get his administration to drop white-collar crime charges against them. These kind of actors are the clients of consulting firms like McKinsey. That is not damning to everybody who works there. But if you're seeking to be president in this moment, I think we need to hear a lot from you about what side you're going to be on, about why you chose that route to go with in the first place. Because we don't have a lot of time to find out that someone wanting to be president for the benefit of working people isn't fully committed given their background. So that's what I want to see from Pete.
Yeah, he did have a really sober analysis as to what the problem is, which is scary because I didn't hear a solution other than that the Democrats need to focus on something positive. What are we fighting for? What do we represent? What's the world we're bringing to people? What are our key policies we're fighting for in America? Rather than we're anti-Trump, we're anti-this, we're anti-that. That it can't just be we're voting against this, but actually what are we voting for? And I was kind of like, okay, yeah, that's true, but like that's kind of why I came here, because I wanted to hear what you think it should be as leader of the party.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that, but he did give this really sober analysis that the Democrats are counting on them getting in office, them being Republicans, Trump, and essentially they screw things up. People get mad at them. They want something else. They vote for Democrats. And he basically explained that that's how Dems operate, which I was kind of like, is he off the dome right now? Is he going to get in trouble for saying that? But yeah, I think he was off the dome because at one point, we know this man was in naval intelligence, I believe, and was in Afghanistan. He took too many pauses in this one story where he was talking about playing fantasy football with Afghans. He was like, they love fantasy football. I would, sit down and the Afghans went by the numbers because they didn't know much about American football, but they loved it. And we thought we could outsmart the statistics and we would pick different teams so they were better than us at fantasy. But he paused a lot. And I was like, what information is he leaving out? Was this like an intelligence operation where they needed to maintain contact? And their method was fantasy football? Like, if we just get them in a league, get these guys in a group chat, they'll always come back and talk to us and share intelligence. But, so we might have been off the dome. I don't know.
Fantasy football, the one of the many tools of the CIA, it turns out, for enforcing control on populations. No, I think Pete Buttigieg is obviously a very smart guy. So you were talking about kind of the things that were left out, which really stands out to me when you're dealing with somebody who's clearly smart like Pete Buttigieg is. If you're that smart, we know that you have an analysis of the problem here. So it's really important when people like that to pay attention to what they leave out. Because when the problem is so clear, when wealth concentration, when you chart it out, the 1% is dwarfed by the 0.1%. This is something Pete Buttigieg knows, and he knows how that power works. So is he talking about that first and foremost as the thesis, as a reason for his campaign? And if he's not, that raises major questions for me, because I think one of the things the Democratic Party does all the time is it's like, I'm not a Cleveland fan. I mean, fuck the Browns, right? Pittsburgh Steelers all the way. But I can understand the pain of Cleveland sports fans. There's a lot of losing that happens. And in that way, they're very similar to the Democratic Party. So when something comes along and it works, like Bill Clinton or like Barack Obama, for like decades after, the party just gets in this loop of trying to copy the last thing that works. And I think that's happening with Pete too. He comes up here in the tip of the spear that he's leading with are these things that these talking points that we hear from the Democratic Party. And it's like, okay, he's standing up there and he is showing us that he knows that we know that the Democrats don't talk about what they're for. But we already know that. And what we need to hear from you, Pete, a very smart person, is your analysis of power and how you're going to roll it back away from the billionaires and to the working people. I just don't hear that enough from Pete Buttigieg. To all of my friends who are waiting on Pete to save us, that's my rub with him.
Yeah, it's so true. There was hardly any questions about labor, which speaks to the audience that he draws, the very sort of middle class, few tax brackets above the audience at the Fighting Oligarchy tour. He did get a standing ovation, very loud applause for talking about Trump's tax cuts for the rich and how we need to actually make sure the rich are taxed and that that money goes towards, paying for making sure no child goes hungry, education. He listed a few things. And that's good, but you can't have 60% of the country not meeting their most basic needs and not have survival be the number one issue in the richest country in the world. There's something terribly wrong. And so they were living it up. They're not the only ones. There's also the Ezra Kleins of the world living it up hard right now, thinking that the solution to the political divide is appealing to the audience that is anti-regulation at a time when Republicans are trying to repeal the fucking Clean Air Act, okay? We can't even agree that the air we breathe should be clean. And you're thinking deregulation is the move, which is absurd.
Yeah, to fill this out a little bit more, if you haven't followed this, Ezra Klein, New York Times columnist and king of the nerds, definitely like a nerd of the mid 2000s to like 2015 variety. He's in there with Matt Iglesias. They kind of like pioneered this like nerd counterculture where they're like, everyone around us is so dumb, but we're like focused on the granular things that are like realistic and pragmatic. And so he wrote a book about this called Abundance, where I think the thesis is like, hey, we need an agenda that produces abundance for everyone. And like, yeah, that sounds pretty good, but we have abundance all around us. I mean, the amount of money that's concentrated at the top of the economy, if it were simply distributed, would be enough for a utopia beyond what anybody could imagine. We have regular problems like 40% of the agricultural production of this country going to waste before it ever reaches people's tables. There is abundance all around us. What we do not have is a political system that distributes it. And we see this show up all the time in statistics about America. Like we keep mentioning this, 60% of households in that recent study not meeting their most basic needs at a time when we have billionaires that literally the top 1.1% is more concentrated than the Gilded Age, an age that is held up in history books and lessons as the poster child for how bad inequality can get. It is worse today in the top 0.1% concentrated of wealth. So the abundance is there. And what's missing from this discussion about Ezra Klein's book is that we have no mechanism to distribute it. I think his focus, on the details of why we cannot build public housing or why it costs so much more to build public housing than market-based housing. He gets way down into the weeds of, government bureaucracy, which is true. There's a nugget of truth in every lie, right? But he focuses on all these things, the little bureaucracies that hold these housing projects back from being built. But he makes the omission about the abundance that exists and not being able to distribute that. And it's an omission that's so large as to be hilarious, which was my main takeaway when he went on the Majority Report with Sam Sater to discuss this book. It's like, that was just never something that was talked about.
There's a problem with this group of people. I like that you say the king of the nerds. It's definitely a group of folks from like, I don't know, the financial crisis that were like, well, actually, there's nuance to everything. And it's like, oh, fucking K. And then they say something that has nothing to do with regular people's lives or something we should even be focusing on. It's like, yeah, there's nuance, but that's totally not the details that are important. And they become so smart that they're stupid, where yeah. they genuinely say things like, yeah, I think they worked really hard for their money, so they should be able to keep it, when they just described a problem that is the product of intentional scarcity and the hoarding of wealth, and like redistribution's the most obvious answer. We need to just ask these people the obvious questions that they forget because they're stupid, which is, why should those people have so much more resources and money than everyone else? Why do they deserve it? Why do they uniquely need $1 billion? Tell me what's so special about them that they need it, and what they're doing that's so good for everyone else that we should let them have it. Yeah, no one has a good answer to that.
No, they don't. And when they're confronted with that, because I've heard people like Ezra Klein be confronted, occasionally with things like this, And their answer is like, oh, well, you don't live in reality. You're not talking about things that are possible. But isn't that the moment that we're at right now? I mean, this is what I always come back to. It's like the choke point right now for society, we're at a peak of innovation and technology. We're at a peak of knowledge. We know how to solve all of the problems. We know how to get energy from where it's being generated by renewable sources to places where the sun doesn't shine. We know how to build these power grids and things. It's not a problem of knowledge or innovation. It's a problem of political will. Yet we're never talking about assembling political will to put the knowledge and technology at our disposal into production and servicing the needs that are currently going unmet in our society. We never talk about building the political movement to make that happen. But now's the time to do it, I think, more than ever.
Yeah, they don't want that political movement to be built. That's the whole thing. I think when Ezra Klein is like, it's not possible, wanna bet? Do you double dog dare the working class to pull a France right now? Like, I don't
Get
even
real
know.
Francie in here.
It's like, have you talked to a working class person recently? Because they're like ready to grab a pitchfork, Ezra Klein. Yeah, what a nightmare. And I think the people who believe that like Trump's overstepping is going to bring the political revolution are also people who are living out too hard. No one's gonna be so mad at Trump driving around in his hundreds of millions of dollar plane that they take action. People are not surviving. It will be a movement out of a demand for survival and getting so fed up that they're stuck making ends meet with scraps while the rich are driving around in their yachts. Like, it's not going to be, oh, big man stupid. No, I don't think so.
Big
Orange
man, stupid.
Cheeto.
Oh, God,
so
please.
corny. Yeah.
Jessica,
All right.
should we check in on the downward spiral that we're all kind of engaged in this country?
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm just saying I don't think it's going to be the thing that brings the political revolution in America when there's so much else going on. But nevertheless, the downward spiral is not looking so good. So habeas corpus being under threat, being suspended. We have Kristi Noem like really talking about this. I mean, it pretty much is suspended when you have the detention of people in the United States who are just being racially profiled as being migrants. ICE is going into bars in downtown Nashville and just going into the kitchens and arresting people. Habeas corpus comes from the Latin phrase, like, to have the body. It literally means, like, arresting someone without a lawful premise. And we're seeing it all across America. Now, Donald Trump enjoyed the due process of law. Very recently, right before he became the president, he had a full trial, he had appeals, but for some reason, when it is someone who is a person of color in America and a white supremacist is in the Oval Office, you have habeas corpus totally being ignored. The need for probable cause for arrest, the need for due process of law, and people are being taken off of the streets, taken out of their jobs.
Yeah, not a great development. Not a great development from from the people who are, so fucking horny for the Constitution. How many times did we hear that? And they're like, "Hey, we're so horny for the Constitution that we're gonna suspend it." Huh? Yeah, who could have saw that coming? But I think it's worth pointing out how these people operate too, because what does it look like in the run up to something as extreme as like suspending the keystone of our Constitution, trial by jury, the right to stand up and say that the government is full of shit? That is every American's right. And that's what they're talking about getting rid of here to pursue their political agenda, which is very retribution based. But it takes a while to get to that point, and we've been on that path. And what it looks like is, it's built on lies. It's built on deception. In this whole campaign, you had one word that they were really focused on: invasion. We are being invaded from our southern border. How many times did we hear this repeated on the campaign trail as Donald Trump was, on his rise to, a badder version of himself. But that was all to manufacture consent for the end game, which is this. This suspension is all based on a law from 1790, whatever the fuck. The Alien Enemies and Invasion Act. You can tell this is an act of very serious journalism with how I'm talking about these facts. But the whole point is that they have to spend years manufacturing consent to do these crazy actions by talking about things that are not happening, like an invasion at our southern border. Are we being invaded? What are the people doing who are invading us? Oh, they're doing all the jobs that are key to corporations making a shit ton of money because they pay the people who are invading us below market wages to do jobs that nobody else wants to do. And by the way, after people do these jobs, immigrants as a population are paying into our tax system at rates that are much higher than the corporations who are exploiting their labor, which oftentimes pay zero federal taxes. So the whole thing is garbage. And I guess the takeaway is that as you hear this garbage come out of their mouth, realize that the pile of garbage can grow so large over 2 years of repeating something like this that you can get to the point where the president is talking about suspending a key part of American law. So that's what's happening. Not great.
And the ideology behind this is pretty obvious, but it just got a whole lot more obvious because an ICE agent, James, also called Jim Rodan, he's a prosecutor for ICE in Dallas, Texas. He's been running a white supremacist X account. Glomar Responder is the handle. He said things like, America is a white nation founded by whites. Our country should favor us. That was last month. He also said, all blacks are foreign to my people. This is insane. The fact that this is someone who voluntarily signs up to work for ICE just makes so much sense considering how ICE has operated in the country and what they're up to right now. And it's starting with the targeting of brown Latino people in America, but it's progressing to people who are enemies of the white supremacist agenda. And people like Nikki Glaser have been questioned when re-entering the country. Oh, you're a comedian. Do you make jokes about Trump? What kind of jokes are those? Hassan was detained and questioned about his news content if he criticizes Trump in that content. So if you're an enemy of the president in America, that's supposed to be really cool and protected in the first few amendments to the Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And he's starting to come for people who just disagree with him. I was talking to a friend who is a citizen of the United States but was not born here. She became one. And she's saying she's not even interacting with content online that's disfavorable to Trump because she's afraid. That's where we're at. That's not good.
Yeah, and that's the attention. You take someone with a profile like Hassan Piker, everybody's favorite left-wing hot boy, and then you detain him at the O'Hare secondary interrogation facility, wherever that is. It's probably behind Qdoba or some shit, because all of this decline is kind of married to just ridiculous parts of our society. But anyway, I digress. The point is to chill speech. I love how our Constitution, right up front, is hey, Americans, you should annoy the president. You should be suspicious of your government. You have inalienable rights by being on this land, and they're right here in the founding document. And now, when you do that, the government's coming after you. And here we are sitting making a podcast, and we're really not that far removed. We, over the months that we've been doing this, that we've been living, that all of us have been living under this administration, it started, we talk a lot about the first they came for X quote, right? First it was pro-Palestine speakers on college campuses, married to legal residents, using their free speech to speak out against the genocide. They came for those people. Then it was people with tattoos that could be people with tattoos. The gay makeup artist who is currently in CCOT right now. Okay, now it is American citizens with popular media channels critical of the president. So there it is. And it's all kind of based on, this is what the garbage turns into. This is what happens when lies aren't really called out, and this is what happens when you don't have an opposition party strong enough to oppose it.
And then we have this news story of Trump bringing people into the United States, white South Africans, also called people who are Afrikaans. I don't doubt this has something to do with Elon Musk, who was born and raised there and whose family has spent a lot of time there, aligned with sort of the white supremacist Afrikaner movement. But it makes no fucking sense that white people in South Africa who have displaced Black and colored South Africans from their land, those people now live in townships outside of the city where they don't even own the land that their house is on, because they would have to fill out paperwork with the city, with the state, that's in English, and they speak mostly Xhosa or Zulu. They can't do English paperwork, a lot of them. And that's why they don't own the rights to the land they live on, so it can easily be taken, and it is frequently taken by the white settlers in South Africa. If we were to roles reverse this and say that in Texas, people don't own the rights to the land they live on and it's being taken by Mexicans, that's kind of how they talk about immigration, as if they're being displaced. But for some reason, in South Africa, the perpetrators are white people. And they're saying that these people are victims of violent displacement, when in fact the opposite is true and has been true for hundreds of years. It becomes so obvious that this is about white supremacy, because in South Africa, the illegal immigrants are the white Afrikaners. But for some reason, you're protecting them. When in the United States, you say it's all about illegal immigration, that's what you care about. No, it's obviously about white supremacy, because the only common thread here are that the people whose side you're on tend to be the white ones. Like, it's so painfully obvious. And yeah, there's crime in South Africa, there's crime in the United States, people's houses get robbed and stuff. But is there a movement of like militants taking white people's land? No. It's so crazy that they just flip the narrative to the complete opposite of the truth. And people don't know what's going on in South Africa and the United States. They don't know where to get good information on that. So they're just taking the president's word for it.
Yeah. And sometimes folks, even as a person who does occasionally do serious journalism, I will say, it is safe to believe your gut sometimes, especially when it comes to Donald Trump and all of his friends. It is safe to assume that whatever he tells you is a lie. It is safe to assume that white South African people are doing better than Black South African people, in spite of what the president says. It's safe to assume these things.
And while all of this is going on, Donald Trump just got gifted this $400 million jet. This is insane. This plane is huge. But John made the really good point, and I want to make sure we don't forget it, that it could be totally bugged.
Yeah. This is a gift from a foreign government. There's a clause in the Constitution about that called the emoluments clause. It's full of all kinds of fun words that are really important. Habeas corpus, emoluments. Trump is just like, yeah, I'll take all that shit. But yeah, this is a foreign government gifting the president of the United States a $400 million plane. And, this has been covered in mainstream media, but who's to say that it's a foreign government, okay? Load that shit with bugs to advance your nation's interests against the imperial power of the world, right? Like, who's not going to do that? And just another installment of the insane corruption of this administration that goes totally uncovered. This is, a very valuable gift that can be transferred directly to Trump. That's the important part to keep at the top of your mind. There are mechanisms to do that, and that's what will happen.
They're calling it the Palace in the Sky.
Nice.
It was a gift from Qatar. That's important. I'll say that why in a second. But who lives in a palace? Royalty. You know who's not royalty? the fucking president of the United States. That's like our whole thing. That's like our founding principle is that there's no royalty.
I want him to be on Spirit Airlines, okay?
I want the president. He can fly first, but on Spirit Airlines.
Spirit Airlines is the only way our president travels. If anything else is the case, then we got it wrong, people. Seriously, get a hold of yourselves.
And he should be well liked enough that there's no security threat for him to fly with everyone on Spirit.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the test. Whether or not TSA is enough for every American to be safe, including the president.
Take your shoes off, Mr.
Can
President.
safely fly. But also, it's interesting to consider the potential of bugs on the plane, and that Qatar has been hosting a lot of the peace talks with what's going on in Gaza, just like how enmeshed we are in the ongoing genocide with this other country who gifted him the plane. I mean, that's crazy.
It is crazy. And you know what will never happen, of course, is just putting the shoe on the other foot. I mean, could you imagine if Hunter Biden got a $400 plane from Qatar? Okay. Obama has to wear a tan suit. Hillary Clinton can, arrange the destruction of her primary opponent over emails and various other things that become career-ending scandals. But this, no, not a chance.
All Hunter Biden did was have a perfect phone call. Perfect. No, I mean, I don't think the president's son should be getting jobs at significant foreign companies that they have no experience in. Hunter Biden was not an energy expert. Did they need specifically Hunter Biden's legal expertise? Probably not at this Ukrainian company. I agree that it's weird, but oh my God, have some consistency. When the corruption is happening, doesn't matter what political party they are in or their parents are in. No one wanted to talk about Jared Kushner's donations from Saudis to the hedge fund. It's not a donation, it's an investment. What the fuck ever. But they're going to make a ton of money off of that money. So to some degree it is. And no one was like, hey, maybe this has something to do with the Iran deal being called off. That, I don't know, an ally is now giving a bunch of money to Jared Kushner, who's responsible for a lot of these diplomatic relationships while Trump was in office. It's just crazy how the hypocrisy is always there.
Yeah,
but I want to talk about...
what's that?
No, I'm going to move on to our fun thing after this, which I'm excited for, so...
Oh, let's move on to that fun thing. I'll just bookend us by saying when we're talking about corruption in the Trump administration, it's not like we're absolving Democrats from this. We are ruled by a horribly corrupt political elite. It's just that the standard for that is set so goddamn high by the Trump administration. What fun things are we getting into to bookend this tailspin that we're all on?
Okay, so we have our first reality TV show president. And I would expect nothing less from his cabinet. Kristi Noem has been reported to be entertaining a reality TV show in which immigrants in the United States can compete for citizenship. Now, DHS has said that Noem didn't actually know about this. The reporting comes from the Daily Beast and the Daily Mail. The Department of Homeland Security, has been working with the writer and producer of Duck Dynasty to produce a reality show called The American, where there will be a string of challenges across the country for the honor of fast-tracking their way to U.S. citizenship. Now, here's why I don't believe DHS responding to this story and being like, Kristi's not talking about this, it's not real, is because the Daily Beast directly talked to the Homeland Security Assistant Secretary, Tricia McLaughlin. She directly told the Daily Beast that the show's concept is under consideration. She did say Noem reviewed the pitch in question, or she denied that Noem reviewed the pitch in question. The concept's in the beginning stages of the vetting process. And so they intentionally made sure Noem hadn't reviewed it. So if this had a negative public reaction, then they could say, well, it's not for real. We just read a letter. They were totally considering this. If the assistant secretary of this huge federal agency directly talked to the press about it, that's called floating the idea. That's called testing the results with the public. It's a known tactic in the world of policymaking. And I think this was actually fucking for real. Unfortunately, America.
I want to unplug all of these cords and go out into the street and scream until I die. Does anybody else feel like this? Also, to our listeners, write into the show, or anybody can do this. I will take a bet and do horrible, disgusting things if Kid Rock and Ted Nugent are not involved in this scheme in some way. I just know it to be true. You know, because of course these idiots are doing a reality TV show, most extreme elimination style, for Americans to compete for their right to exist, or be like somebody smashes a giant red button and you just like blast off into CCOT forever. Like, oh.
Fucking Ari from Love Island just like, I'm sorry, you have been eliminated. You're going to El Salvador, pack your bags.
See you later forever. Oh man, the depravity knows no ends.
And of course they were having it serve their political agenda, because I read the article and they were going to make it a whole thing about how these people really highlight why they love America so much and want to be an American. So it was also going to serve as like a huge propaganda machine, which is just more disgusting, because it's like, not only are you making people fleeing violence caused by American imperialism, okay, and they're coming here and they want to live a good and honest life, and you've made the process so lengthy to legally migrate to the United States that they're living their lives in limbo, risking potential kidnapping by ICE and deportation to a country that they're not from, being put in a prison and torn apart from their families. Not only are you going to say, okay, get in a ring and fucking compete, but also talk about why we're so great while you do it.
You know what?
What?
You know what? I changed my opinion on this. They have something good here. They have something really good here, and I can see it. It just needs twisted a little bit. We need to switch up the characters so that it's Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump competing for their right to stay out of CCOT, actually. And I think that show would be both enjoyed and consumed wildly by the working class of this country that is being tortured by these people who are basically the equivalent of the kid burning ants with a magnifying glass.
Yes.
So you know what? Let's run
this. I want to host this. I want to be like,
oh, totally.
This week, billionaires, America voted for their favorite. So we will now see who has been redeemed from the gulag and who has been damned for another 10 years.
Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos has got to rip 1,000 tissues out of a box in under 30 seconds, or else we blast him off to Mars.
The challenges should be dumb as fuck.
Oh, hell yeah. Jeff Bezos. I
want them to chip rocks.
Yeah, that'd be good. Elon Musk has to drink 24 eggs. Or we will send him to space forever.
Larry Ellison today is doing the cinnamon challenge.
No. Mark Andreessen eats a pint of nutmeg.
Oh my god, I can't. I want this so bad.
Put a Scottish announcer on there.
If Gen Z does the revolution, it's going to be so much fun.
Tonight in the villa, Mark Andreessen.
Oh my god. Stop.
They're onto it.
I need this.
America needs this.
America needs this. But then also we can have like re-education sessions, and then they go in the direct-to-camera confessional where they talk about what they learned. So today we read Marx, and like he actually made a lot of good points, and I wish I'd read it sooner and I overlooked it. And then the other people, it's like fucking Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, they're like, I think she's just saying it for the camera. It's like, I don't think she's actually.
Real office confessional style.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. John,
it's time.
Are we a wrap?
I think we're a wrap. JJ Nation, it's always good hanging out with you. Don't forget, at the end of the day on this dystopian tailspin, if we all just have the light bulb go off at the same time, a beautiful world is within our reach, and we try to talk about the evil villains here standing in the way of that great pie in the sky, right within our grasp. and it's
We don't
been
have an
fun this
interview
episode.
today.
No interview.
Yeah, we had too much to talk about, and I'm not even gonna lie, we didn't get to all of it. I came out with a new reporting on FEMA, a huge leak. I got like 10 minutes from the introductory meeting of the new super unhinged acting director of FEMA, Richardson. David Richardson is crazy. And then I got 30 minutes from yesterday's town hall meeting. This guy didn't even know Texas was big. Let's start there. He was asked, like, if what's more important, the president's will or the interests of the American people. He said they're the same thing, and then trailed off and was like, wait, what were the two categories again? So you can take a look at that at Drop Site. We don't need to talk about it. You can read it on your own.
Well, I don't think we're a wrap just yet, because you can't just tease me with that nugget without talking about it a little bit. So
Okay.
what is this, Jessica? Is your Drop Site piece about FEMA leaked audio? Somebody doesn't know how big Texas is, and somebody else thinks that the will of the president. Yeah, fill us in.
It's almost hurricane season. This is the top FEMA official. The last guy, Cam, I forget his last name, was fired after giving congressional testimony where he was basically like, I think FEMA is an essential agency that should not be dissolved because the Trump's will and intent, which this guy, David Richardson, is laser focused on enforcing. He talks about it all the time. I am here to achieve the president's will and the president's intent. He goes on to say that that intent is to reduce FEMA only to what is absolutely required by the laws and statutes governing FEMA. And his goal right now is to define a new mission of FEMA 2.0, that pushes every function that is not absolutely mandated by law onto the states. The states do not have the money for that. So they're saying this is being done to save the American people dollars, and in the name of government efficiency. There's nothing efficient about Hurricane Helene coming into North Carolina, and then the state of North Carolina has to come up with the funds all of a sudden to pay for people in boats to rescue folks from their houses where the surrounding area is flooded. That kind of timeliness is going to make our response to storms not only more expensive in terms of recovery, but also nearly impossible to get done in a timely manner when timeliness is of the essence to save lives in disasters. And so, God, they're really, really playing with fire if they're making these big changes ahead of the disaster season. In this leaked audio, he talked about not really having a full plan for the 2025 season. And so he said, we'll never have 100% of the plan, but I think we could get like maybe 80, 98%. Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And listening to you talk about that, I thought of my own piece that I did when another climate-fueled disaster dumped a bunch of rain on southern West Virginia and wiped out towns there. Did a piece with More Perfect Union about that. But the FEMA response is atrocious. And I think here again, through your reporting at Drop Site about the guy running this agency, we see another example of what's happening in every single facet of American life controlled by this Trump regime, which is they're just transferring institutions that are supposed to serve the public. They are transferring the money and power that is intended to serve the public into private hands where they intend to have their friends charge us, nickel and dime us through the nose to survive, to have a disaster response, any at all, in a world where it's already inadequate. And here they are doing it again. And you can expect more of it until we, depose these people, really throw them out of power.
I will say something, JJ Nash, that is only for you. I'm not going to say this anywhere else. Is he told this story about Texas, finding out Texas is big. And he says, my girlfriend in Texas with big red hair, she's a Texan. She said to me, Texas is bigger than Spain. I didn't know that, so I looked at a map. Texas is huge. Now, I want you to remember the description of the girlfriend. Big red hair, lives in Texas, okay? When I was in graduate school, and I told this story to PBS one time. It's on their page, PBS Student Reporting Labs. You can watch this. It's from weeks ago. And this meeting happened yesterday where he said this Texas thing with the big red hair girlfriend from Texas. So I had this mentor I looked up to, Angela Blanchard. She has big red hair. She runs the disaster relief organization, Baker Ripley, that organized a lot of the Katrina response. She lives in Houston. She was an inspiring person. She's done a lot of cool shit. So I was like, what do I do when I leave grad school? Let's sit down together. I don't want to stay in the policy lab I'm at. I don't like research. No one wants to make good policy. I don't want to work for Deloitte or McKinsey or any of that shit. And she's like getting frustrated because I don't want any of her connections. She's like, well, what do you care about? And I was like, the truth. And she was like, there isn't one. And I said, what? She's like, it's all subjective. There is no real truth in the world. Fast forward. I'm a journalist. A job laser focused on exposing and finding the truth. And then it comes up that this guy's girlfriend is a woman from Texas with big red hair. And he's the head of FEMA for disaster relief. What are the odds it is the same woman? It was a weird full circle moment. And I really think it could be about her.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
I think we're in a simulation. None of this shit
and I was
is real.
Like, also, Dropsite News, where I put out my reporting, was mentioned when they threatened FEMA employees for polygraph tests for leaking to the press. And so what if he's just fucking with me?
The layers go too deep, Nash.
Yeah, it's funny. So I'm glad we got to that, actually. We didn't beat our curse of going over an hour on these episodes, but maybe that's just what it is.
And hey, you know what? Maybe you're listening at 1.5 times speed, you know, and if you're doing that, congrats. You're better than all the other members of the nation.
Hell yeah. I love listening on fast speed. I listened to a message from John this morning on 1.5 speed where he was watching baby birds and a robin was learning to fly and he was like, look at this little bastard.
I stand by that, you know. Robins need to be humbled. They need to be checked. Especially with the ability to fly. Who do you think you are, little bastards?
That's amazing, John. I love that. I love calling cute things. We had a baby rabbit in the backyard, the little bastard.
This little bastard. If I ever have some kids, a bunch of little bastards, you know.
I'm a bastard. My parents weren't married when I was born. That's the definition of bastard. I'm a little bastard.
And that's a wrap, JJ Nash. Until next time, all you little bastards, go out there and reassert control over this place.
Like how people have their audience community have a name, like the Giggle Squad is the Gigglers. Ours is the Little Bastards.
Little bastards.
Oh my god. Let us know if you like that or not. We could change it.
Yeah, we're into the consent of the governed at this podcast.
Thanks for listening, JJ Nation. Until next time.
Bye-bye.